Okay, John, you've got the first item. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty much just what it says right there. Um, it's probably jumping the gun a bit, but I'm trying to get an indication of um, are we intending like a clean split in 12-4? So at the minute, I'm encouraging people to draw issues from both sides of the team, just depending on what they feel they can best contribute to. But I was trying to get an idea if for 12-4 we're planning to have sort of equal amounts of work planned for portfolio management and certify, as well as project management. And what Gabe and Keenan's thoughts are on that.
My thoughts are, I mean, that makes sense to me to do a clean split unless there's reasons why we shouldn't. I think we had I don't know the original reason why the resources were allocated the way they were, but I'm guessing it aligns to the product strategy as a whole and longer term. So like if we hired the resources for that group, we should have them work on issues within the group. That's just my take on it.
Sorry, I was muted. For me, that works too. The only question I have is Keenan sort of temporarily taking Certify? Like, is that still with Gabe? Like, how does that shake out? Because when we split, we just said, you know, that exact mechanics of how we split between portfolio management and Certify are kind of up to John, basically, and Donald, and the PMs for those areas. But for now, we just said we would bundle them together. So, like, there's 4 backend engineers on portfolio management plus Certify. There's not 3 on portfolio management on one and 1 on Certify or anything like that.
There's a new PM starting for Certify on, I think, the 8th of September. So in so much as that impacts this, and there will be a dedicated PM for that
Cool.
in a couple weeks. So I think it's kind of a moot point, but once we do, then that PM will work with John to get the resources for whatever issues are in Certify.
Yeah, I think John, Donald, and Keenan can sort that out with the new PM then.
Cool.
So yeah, that works for me. Donald, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, on the front end, it's a little different because every we're still working on the same kind of plan board. Just even in 12.4 we are just with a preference for the group that they are a part of, that engineers are a part of. So yeah, I think, I mean, it makes sense to do it in 12.4 as much as it makes sense to do it in the future on the front end. So I'm okay with having a clean split for the back end stuff and the project management stuff in 12.4. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's cool. Thanks. So I just wanted to get an idea so that, as I'm doing one-to-ones with people and trying to plan for this, that we have a sort of date in mind where we knew this release was going to be a sort of transitionary release, but that the next one will be a clean split.
Yeah, sorry, and I think as far as things are now, we plan to start working on 12.4, which is in quotes because obviously that doesn't exactly line up with when things get deployed, but we plan to start working on 12.4 on the 8th of September, which is also when the new Certified PM starts. So that's kind of the assumption I've been using, but if anybody wants to change that, I'm okay with that too. Okay, doesn't sound like anybody does want to change that. Kushal, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'll quickly demo on what we have going on for free drag and drop. Sean, you want me to take over the screen sharing?
Sure, let me stop because I don't think. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I've been working with our UX and backend on how to get the drag and drop working. And as we discussed in last plan team call, that currently interspersed reordering is not supported from the backend perspective, which means that we cannot have an issue between two epics manually ordered and vice versa. So what we decided was to how to basically communicate this on UI, where user can still reorder issues amongst themselves and epics amongst themselves, but still not be able to reorder with each other in cross fashion. So right now I have the tree available here. As you notice that the moment I start dragging this issue, you would see this small line. Obviously, line color, and the styling is not final, but this is more of a work in progress thing. So this will basically show a tentative position where it can be placed. But since we want drag and drop to be also be able to change the parent of an item, we want to keep the UX similar. So the way it happens is that when you try to drag an issue on top of epics, the position line goes away. Instead, you would notice that individual epics are highlighted into blue. What this means is that if user releases the button here, the issue will go inside that epic, and that epic itself will become parent for this issue. So again, this is not integrated with backend. So if I release the button, nothing would happen. But this is what we are aiming for, where user can basically grab an issue, put it on top of epics. And if user wants to reorder, they can just keep it confined to the list of issues. The moment they go outside the issues list itself within the tree, the line will go away and blue highlight will show up. When it comes to epics, we want similar experience that user should be able to reorder it among itself. But if user tries to move it on top of issues, nothing happens. Like if I release the button, it will go back to its original place. So that's how we are restricting or basically confining issues and epics within the tree to be reordered within themselves. But there's one problem here is that we not only we want to allow user to change parent of issues, we also want to change parent of epics. So just to give you an analogy, we basically want this experience to be similar to file managers. So think of epics as folders and issues as files. So I want user to be able to put file inside of a folder. I want user to be reorder just the folders, and I want user to be able to move a folder inside of a folder. But we cannot put a file between two folders, and we cannot put folder between two files. Those are the restrictions. Otherwise, it is somewhat similar to file manager. So what happens here is that ideally I would want that when I move an epic between the epics at a certain cursor position, this line would show up, which means that I can reorder it in a way I want. But if there is a certain cursor position in place that I want this epic to be moved inside of an epic, then this line should go away and instead it should highlight as blue. Now here's the problem. We are using a sortable JS library to do this entire drag and drop. And currently library doesn't support this sort of interaction where you can have a two-form drop, where if you are keeping an item at a certain position, it would go inside, or if you are keeping an item at a certain position, it would reorder. That is simply not possible with this library. So to overcome this limitation, what we can do now is that if I have one of the parent expanded, and then I try to drag this item, then once the parent is expanded, you would notice that the line shows up inside of that parent, and the parent itself is highlighted as blue. So this way we can move an item inside of an item here. But if it is collapsed, that is not possible. And I tried exploring any other library that we can use along with Sortable.js. And I also looked at what are the event handlers that Sortable exposes in order to achieve this. And it is not possible. Like there are a few plugins which are available for jQuery, but we don't want to go that route. Sortable.js is one of the options, and Sortable simply doesn't support this sort of mechanism. You would need to have one of the parent already expanded before you can move an item inside of it. But why does it work in case of issues? Because we have some custom CSS and JS going on here, which allows us to show this blue highlight. And the moment user would release the button, I'll be able to identify where exactly user dropped that issue, and I would move that issue inside of an epic. And also, since we cannot put issues between two epics, this kind of interaction is possible. But since epics are reorderable among themselves and epics can also be put inside of each other, we cannot combine both the interactions in a single type of interface. So that's the problem we have. Alternatively, what I was thinking of, and since as I said that this is obvious limitation that you cannot put an epic inside of an epic unless you expand that target epic. And for example, if epic doesn't have any children, then you cannot expand it. And without having any children's there, you cannot put any other epic inside of it. So that's a clear limitation. So we don't want to deliver a half-baked drag and drop just because we cannot put epics inside of an epic. So the alternative mechanism of changing parents, what I was thinking of was that right now, like in 12.3, we already pushed an MR where you can open any issue, and in the issues sidebar, there's an option to change parent epic. Like we have an epic drop down within the issue sidebar. So technically, you can change parent of any issue by visiting that issue page. Similarly, we can use that same sidebar drop down in case of epic sidebar as well. Like right now, the only way to change parent of an epic is to either go to that epic and then use this epic / command like parent epic or child epic, or you can go to the tree tab and use basically this add epic and paste in the link. But it is like a multi-click process. But what if we had the sidebar option right away, where user can just click on edit and select one of the existing eligible parent epics and change the epic directly. That way, we will still allow user to change parent epics directly without going multiple places. And at the same time, we'll be able to do reordering in a normal fashion. Like reorder of issues can happen amongst itself, and reorder of epics can happen in itself. So those are basically the problems. Like there are a lot of things going on how we want to do drag and drop. There was one more UX research that we have been doing. I need to find that issue. Probably Annabelle can chime in here. That we won't be able. Basically want to show a full-fledged sidebar, which would take up half or 70% of the page by clicking on any issue and epic, and we would show entire issuable metadata within that sidebar. So technically, user will be able to change whatever they want to change about that issue or an epic just by clicking on it without reloading the page or visiting any other page. So if we want to allow user to change parent information, we can go with that original design that we had in mind, where user can change whatever they want about an issue or an epic by clicking on it and then revealing the sidebar. Because doing that with drag and drop with Sortable.js is not possible. The third option that I thought of, apart from this sidebar option, was that roll out our own drag and drop. And that is a lot more effort than we think it is, because we would then have to re-implement the entire drag and drop library just to suit our needs with all the backend restrictions in place. So I just wanted to bring this up with the rest of the team and let me know what you think about, like, if we want to go with reordering part and get done, get basically this feature done for 12.3, then we skip the parent changing interface part at least and just allow do reordering manually. And then if user really wants to change the parent, they can always click on the link and go to the sidebar drop down and change it.
Well, Kushal, are you saying that now, another way to change the parent is by expanding the parent and dragging it into that new parent, correct?
Yes, only for epics. Like I can change a parent of any existing issue by just dropping on top of it, because as you can see, there is this blue highlight already present. So that can be done. Again, this is not something Sortable.js supports. We are doing this manually by exploiting the Sortable.js event handlers using mouse move events. So that way we can do it. And that is possible because we cannot put issues between two epics, which is why we can do this other route of identifying where exactly user is trying to drop this issue on top of epics. But when it comes to epics itself, we have two things going on. We want to be able to reorder the epic between two epics, but at the same time, if user is keeping it just at a right position, we want to move that epic inside of the target epic as well. So there are two interactions involved when it comes to Epic, but when it comes to issues, there is only one interaction, and that is either reorder among itself or dropping inside of an.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know that. I mean, that almost feels more natural too. So I'm completely fine with that being the first, our first iteration of getting this out, because the other thing that gives us by forcing users to expand the Epic first is that we don't need to guess the order, assuming we just put it like at the bottom of the order.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's the right way. Maybe it makes sense to be on the top. At least now I have explicitly define the order that they want that new child to be at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Donald. I think that seems a lot more natural and intuitive. I think like you just said, it avoids them having to do 2 steps.
Yep. So basically, if we want to allow changing parents, then I think we should not allow that by doing drag and drop. We only keep drag and drop limited to just reordering items, and that will simplify our implementation as well. Like right now, we have a mildly hacky way of what we are doing right now, even to achieve the current state of this feature. Like I know there are some CSS changes that I have done to highlight individual epics as blue the moment user tries to drag an issue on top of epics. And at the same time, just to show this line, like right now, if you move any item, you would notice this blue line. It is not actually a line indicator that Sortable.js supports. Sortable supports showing entire ghost element. So like if you check the libraries page itself, then it basically shows the entire target element. Like notice how I'm dragging this item 6. And while I'm having this item 6 draggable right now, the placeholder that it shows is the actual element that I'm trying to drag. It doesn't show line indicator. The way I'm doing line indicator part here is that I have basically used CSS to shrink the height of it, and using border color to show it as a line. And that was more natural because otherwise things would jump around. So I've disabled the animations here. I have reduced the height to 0 for the placeholder item, and that's how I'm showing the line. So there are a lot of small hacks going on just to achieve the kind of UX we have. But if we were to allow just reordering part, there won't be any hacks. The implementation will be very simple and straightforward. And at the same time, if user wants to change parents, they can just visit the page itself and do it from the sidebar, like I showed.
So we added the line because we were going to support changing parents, and it got really shifty. I'm not totally sure now if we need the line because we're just moving things up and down in their current boxes. So right now, I'm going to look into it a little bit, but when we're changing parents, it got really messy and ugly, and so the line was good for that. So we might want to go back to the default shadowing, which we already have for all of our other drag and drop elements, but I'm going to think about that. I think that might be just a more straightforward solution.
Yeah, and at the same time, the reason why line works for now is because we wanted basically to allow user to drop items inside of an epic just by dropping over it. And if we were using the entire ghost element to show as a placeholder, then even dragging and dropping to put inside of an item would be a problem. So if we were to do just reordering part with this feature and not do any kind of parent changing things, we can revert back to older layout where we were showing full element as a placeholder. And then not changing parents by doing drag and drop. We would still do it with the sidebar.
So just to summarize, so we're thinking first implementation, don't change any parents for issues or epics. We'll just reorder within each respective group being issues and epics. And then for further enhancements, we have an issue somewhere, I don't have access to it, where it might have been Gabe actually who opened it, where you'll click on an issue or an epic and it slides out and you can see all the metadata associated with that. And we can update things right on that page.
Yeah, and as far as changing parents from sidebar goes, So right now, issue sidebar already has the drop down present. We don't have one for Epic sidebar, but adding it shouldn't be a problem because we already have public API available to change any Epic parent using just the parent Epic ID. So adding that drop down option in the sidebar might be a minimum solution that we can do for 12.3 at least, so that we would have a consistent UX of having drop down in the sidebars, be it issues or epics. And that way user can still do it with a single interaction point without having to finding out the link first and then clicking on the tree tab and then clicking on add an epic and then pasting the link. Because right now it is a multi-step process. We can simplify this part at least by introducing a sidebar. And but yeah, let me know what you think. Like, would it make sense to have Epic drop down in an Epic sidebar, or do we not want to do it and keep it limited to the tree tab itself?
I don't think we're ready to put it in the sidebar. The UX team is working on implementing in our pattern library a drawer or a slide out that will work for multiple places. And I don't want to rush something like this where we just kind of, I don't know, overlay it or push it out further. So I think that should be for 12.4 at the earliest. It requires a little bit more UX work.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Clarifying question. So are we saying we're also going to get rid of the ability to move parentless issues into a parent epic in drag and drop, or into an epic?
I didn't get your question, Donald. Can you repeat it, please?
So go back to the list, or close those epics.
Okay, sure.
So the issues listed here, can we drag those into an epic like you can right now? Or we say we're getting
we can, but at the same time, if we are not allowing epics to be dragged inside of an epic, then I don't think it would be wise to allow that just for issues, because it would be confusing. Like, if we want to restrict users from changing parents, we do it for everything within the tree. We don't just do it for epics.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so in that case, I'll update the scope of the original issue to which this MR is bound to. I'll update that for now, for this particular iteration, we would just do reordering part. We won't allow user to change parents. And then we can revisit on how to change parents, like do it with that slide over sidebar or do it in some other way. Yeah, and that would simplify the implementation, because currently GraphQL backend that we have in this MR already supports reordering within the context itself. So for me, it is as simple as integrating with the GraphQL changes. So I think by end of day tomorrow, we will have fully functional reordering feature at least. And then we can do remaining of the UX changes that we received after we enabled the feature flag in GitLab.com, like moving tree and roadmap tabs to the description area of the epics and then showing discussions in the bottom. So those changes can be done once we finalize on how we want to do drag and drop, and then we can push everything into 12.3.
Okay, so once the drag and drop is done and pushed into production, can we turn on the feature flag, or should we wait to finish up those UX changes that we found from the first iteration?
Okay, so the UX changes that were proposed are very simple ones. It is merely reordering of items within the page. So it is essentially a HAML page update. So that should be simple. Once we have the drag and drop completed, I'll do those UX changes, probably within same MR, because the diff size for those changes is really small. So I don't want to open another MR. And then once everything is merged into master, we can enable the feature flag, and that would immediately reflect the new UX with the drag and drop in place. And then we can collect any feedback that we receive, like how the drag and drop itself is perceived. And if we find any follow-up changes to do, we do it and then enable it for GA.
That sounds great. I agree with that. I'd like those minimal UX changes before we release it again, because if we don't, it'll just be the exact same looking thing that people will complain about.
Yep. Okay, so thanks a lot for the input, everyone. And looks like I only had the last item. So unless anyone wants to add anything, I think we are done.
Okay, great. Well, have a great day, everybody. I'll upload this to YouTube once my laptop's finished converting it. Given previous form, that might be later this week, or it might be today. Who knows? See you later. Bye.